right, welcome to the Prospect Podcast. We have a great one for you today. Middle of the afternoon for us, not for you out in Cali land, but for us, it's middle of the day, and it's we're excited to really talk about sports performance. What it takes to become an elite athlete, and no better person to talk to than CiCi Murray. So we're glad to have her as a guest today. Before we talk a bit about her background, I have Coach DePascal as always here today. He's situated in the middle. We never know. Sometimes he's on the left. Sometimes I'm on the left. Right now, until somehow StreamYard gets us kicked out for some reason. But right now you're in the middle. CiCi has really done a great job, and she's worked with over hundreds of elite athletes, from NFL players to MLB players to collegiate athletes, and obviously I'm sure as well high school and athletes as well. She's really built a reputation for herself, both working with male and female athletes, working with athletes getting ready for the NFL Combine, and she's really developed a reputation of really helping athletes get to their maximum performance level in the time needed. So we're really excited to talk to her today. CiCi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Quite the introduction. I appreciate that. hard to follow up on that. So yeah, I appreciate it.
That's it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
If you could go and just dive into your own athletic journey, you're diving into becoming a coach, performance coach, and kind of your genesis of your career for our listeners.
Sure. It's funny because I always get asked this, and I say the same thing every time. I was like a super mediocre athlete, and I actually stopped playing volleyball in high school because I had a male coach that I didn't quite agree with. And now it's so funny to me as what I do now as a female coach who mostly coaches males. I think about it now and I'm like, oh, is that what I would have chosen now? So it's kind of an interesting path. But after high school, I went to college at Cal State Fullerton for kinesiology. And I planned on going like the physical therapy path, and I worked in a physical therapy office all throughout college, which was amazing. And I loved that. But I think, I through trial and error and learning ins and outs of working in an office and different types of people and that kind of thing, it taught me really, really great and invaluable skills. But I think I had too much personality a little bit for an office all day. So during my time there, I actually got asked to coach a 7-on-7 team. And yeah, it was it was a local school that I worked with a lot of their football guys anyway. I started just kind of like going to their practices and going to their games and going on the sidelines and talking to their coaches. And so it kind of just came about where it kind of made sense. And I did that and I loved that. So I, kind of fell into more of a football space from there. I continued to work with a lot of football athletes. I ended up working with an NFL guy, and I met his speed coach. And his speed coach was like, hey, you do a lot of the same stuff that I do anyway. I think that, you have really great skills, relationship skills, and, work ethic skills. Like I would love to, maybe do something in the future if that's something you're interested in. So I ended up leaving the facility that I was at, and I called him up and I was just like, hey, let's link up. He was like, yeah, a bunch of my athletes over here at this field, like just come say hi tomorrow. And I did. And I knew a bunch of his guys, and I, pretty much have been in this space ever since in some way or another. So that was back in 2019, 2020, maybe, was my first draft prep year. So since then, yeah, it's kind of been just rocking and rolling and building off of that.
That's interesting. That's a unique path to really getting into it. Obviously, the kinesiology background gives you the background necessary to be able to break things down from that standpoint. But really, unique path in getting into it, especially the NFL Combine prep side of it, which is a flooded market with obviously, especially where we live on the East Coast, where on the East Coast side of it, like most people go to Florida, right? And then on the West Coast side of it, they go to California, Arizona, right? For that, and there's certain places that have been big there, and it's a marketplace that um, it's required to really get a short time period, a lot of exceptional performance. So it's definitely cutthroat. And I was an NFL agent for 6 years, so that's how I know that. But
Mhm.
so it's and at one time owned speed and strength facilities for years, but that's a long time ago. But it's a unique space to be in. Talk about before we dive into like the performance side of it. You talked earlier about that like flip dynamic where you're working with mostly male athletes. What was that road like in the beginning, and how has that evolved since?
It was treacherous in the beginning, I would say. um,
That's good. Okay.
yeah, it was treacherous. I think that more so because when I first started, it was like I was confident and comfortable in every situation, but then my relationship skills is what I kind of had to like fall back on because I was still learning new things and I was showing up and I was being resourceful and everything. But then I had to go and mess up in front of millionaires. Like I had to go and demonstrate some drills and look stupid because truthfully, there is, whether you want to argue it or not, there's, skill or physical differences, obviously, that are going to come with it. And I have to go and show NFL athletes what I need them to do. So that was a huge hurdle for me in the beginning, I think, is just like repping everything out and quite honestly messing up in front of really important people in order to know that I never want to look like that again and
Right.
never want to look that silly and be in that position. But now I think with a lot of the guys that I work with now, I've been working with a lot of them since their combine year or like since their draft year. So I'm now in 4 off seasons deep with them. And, there's really no questions or there's no, areas where I don't feel adequate because I've shown up for the last 4 years. And the new guys, for example, like I'll be starting a draft prep class up in January. So for the new guys, it'll probably come as a surprise. I think it's obviously a little bit more accepted now and things aren't as, oh, what's going on here or anything like that. But there is still a huge gap in the fact that I'm a performance coach and I have them during the most crucial time frame of their career up to that point, and they're trusting me with 4 seconds of one event that could determine whether they make millions of dollars. So there's hurdles and there's obstacles and everything that come with it, but I think any discrepancies or, like I said, gaps are filled by my strength of relationships.
What did you do to gain the knowledge to be able to teach these drills and to teach the development in those skill areas? Because it's very specific stuff. Um, having taught combine prep for many years, it's those skills that are necessary and the skills to be able to bring the time down. There's some really specific things that have to be able to be developed in order to help them improve in that area over a short time period, and in particular, obviously with acceleration, right? So, among the other drills, what were some of the things that you did to gain the knowledge base in order to begin to teach those things and to plan the programming for it?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, every situation that I've been in has taught me so much. Like me being in college, I went to a school that was very strength and conditioning based. It was very functional. We had to take every single sport class in order to graduate. Like we weren't like a physics or a chem heavy major school. It just, that wasn't what we were. In the gym, we were on the field, we were in the weight room, like we were doing all of these things. So that gave me a really solid base. And then being at the physical therapy office and going to all these practices and seeing what was important and going in and sitting on, film and chalk talk and, real life practice situations. That was helpful. And then getting with my mentor and my business partner, Les, he was a huge help in, kind of tailoring everything that I knew into what was specific and what was possible and what was valuable, and especially within this certain time frame. So like I said, I mean, there was years where it was learning phases and periods, and figuring out what worked and what didn't, and figuring out what worked for me and how I can coach it and what didn't. So that was huge. And then, like I said, you get this 8-week period where you only have one goal, two goals: keep the athlete healthy and make them run faster. That's it.
Right.
The benefit is that you get these guys and they're already sensational athletes, and that helps. And they come off of, they come off of good programs and big programs that they've been taught decent things, or you come to the other side of that where they're sensational athletes and they're really fast, but they look like shit. And if they're already running 22 plus miles an hour, like, I can't exactly change what makes them run 22 miles an hour. Like, I don't want to change that, but I can tailor the start, right? Figure out what your strengths are and not detrain you from what makes you good and what makes you fast. So it's really comes down to, like, profiling and analyzing the athlete, and again, seeing what they're good at and at what phase of the run are they best at. Everybody's bucketed, and within 8 weeks, you just have to find those pockets and like I said, train their strengths and keep them good at what they're good at, and focus on what is really important, which is, the start, the first 10 yards, the last 20. Like, there's, we break it up into pieces. So everything changes a little bit, year to year. We add, we take away, but the basics kind of remain the same. And I'm super grateful for Les in that department, because combine training is so specific. So knowing what is important and at what time, that's huge too. You can't peak them too early. You can't peak them too late. Guys run at Indy. And then, you have guys that are still running pro day that is a month and a half later. So you just got to kind of keep track of timetables.
What is it as far as how you philosophically develop the speed for the 40-yard dash and the acceleration, and from a programming standpoint, like what is the philosophy that you guys have as far as how you develop that?
Mainly our top goal is like 0 missed training days. Right now, we are at the point where if you're going to a good school, you're playing until the middle of January.
Right.
NFL Combine is at the end of February, beginning of March, right? So, okay, some philosophies go out the window, and some, training programs, it's like, yeah, I can't actually start that guy when I want to.
Right.
So our main philosophy is, keeping guys in the green. We have done a really good job at investing in, like, our health side and our health performance team. And that's been huge, because we're able to take, like, structural versus how are they feeling day to day versus, what issues are they experiencing? Did they sleep 2 hours last night? And is that going to make them run poorly today?
Right.
We factor so much in. And that comes after years of research, and years of different testing, and what can we do and what pieces can we fit to make this make sense, because it just is different than any other training that we do throughout the year. I hardly, other than this, I don't have any group just for 8 weeks really and have two singular goals. So philosophy just comes down to research backing, what we feel is most important for that individual athlete, and keeping guys healthy.
Absolutely. With respect to the athletes that you have long term, so athlete comes in, I'm guessing those might be like high school athletes. Is that what you guys have mostly, like year round, or are they
Yeah,
pro athletes out of season? What do you guys have most year round?
So I'm on staff all year round with the high school football team. So that's
Right.
in season, off season. I'm with them 2 to 3 days a week. And this is my 3rd year with them. So, I used to be sitting around in football off season, when they go back in the season, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
But,
Right.
but, you find the kind of niche teams, or you find those teams that stick. And so I'm with them all year round. And then, we have like our private training, and then we have like our group training. My group training, I have an academy. So that, for example, is kind of like a mixed bag of athletes. Some guys are in season, some guys are off season, some guys are football, baseball, soccer, lacrosse, girls too. Majority are guys. But so that's kind of like, I'm gonna have an idea for who's going to be there more versus what season they're in. So that's going to kind of dictate that a little bit, but pretty much all year there's a need for it at some point. So
and then how do you structure your program? So is it speed related? Is it combination of speed and strength? Do you focus on athleticism? Like how do you guys structure that for, like, take me through like a football team that comes to you that's there year round?
Yeah. So in season, off season, I have a little bit longer with them, but in season, I literally have them for the first 30 minutes of practice. It's a warm up, it's some plyos, it's some high intensity exposures, and I send them to practice.
Right.
They go to practice and then they lift after, or I send them to lift and then they practice after. So a lot of my side, like with the team's involvement, a lot of my side is just the speed. And then I do, kind of like the sports science. So I'll send the coaches, the practice reports and give them GPS data and things like that. So that's a little bit more, high level, but I've been fortunate this off season with a couple of my NFL guys to program out their field and their weight room, which was nice because, I have my strength and conditioning certification and I don't necessarily use it all that much. Of course, it gives me great background, but it was nice structuring things in the weight room as well that were going to help me out on the field, because that's a huge piece too. I especially say that to like parents of younger athletes that, hey, if they don't have a good strength foundation, like their field work is going to be hard. Their speed work is going to be hard for them. It's how much force can you actually produce before you hit a certain threshold. So I think most of my work comes on the speed side, but during combine and then some during off season, I'm in the weight room as well, which is great.
Are you utilizing so you said you're using the GPS system. So like, how do you use the GPS systems? Like what kind of data are you looking to interpret, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the athletes are really only worried about their top speed. They don't really care about anything else. But as you guys probably both know, if you're exporting GPS data, you're getting like 200 metrics. So
right.
Do I use all those? No. Do I look at all those? Yes. What do I make digestible and send to the coach is different. Right. So like I'm, maybe I'll compare Mondays to Mondays, or I'll give them a week worth of practice and, I'll give them their total distance covered, how many yards of that was actually spent in like a high speed zone, how many accelerations, how many decelerations, giving them, it's for them, it's more so how do I give this information to them without overwhelming them, especially if we're in season. So I just give them a green, yellow, or red flag and tell them why.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so if somebody gets a red flag, for example, does that mean they're being overworked? Or are they being is that part of it too? Like you're analyzing like how much ground they're covering, what speed they're covering, what falls off, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of like an overall player load, which a lot of GPSs, depending on, the company, they use different metrics to dictate player load, but it's overall player load, and how do we kind of manage that, and then what of that is actually gonna be interpreted into practice. Like, yes, I can have those conversations with the coaches and the position coaches and say, hey, we need to modify this guy, even just pull him back a couple reps. But then we're also using that as I use the GPS as, hey, has this guy hit his 90% of his max speed in the last 5 to 7 days. If not, he's either going to hit it with me or, hey, I need you to have him hit that today in practice. So I'm also having these kids, which is a wild claim on my part, but I have these kids fill out a wellness questionnaire every day as well. So they're filling out how much they slept, what's their mood, what's their overall soreness, what's their fatigue, how, hard would they rate the practice and things like that. So that gives me a little bit more kind of background or intel into if they, are a red flag, why is that happening?
And so with your coaches, is that something that they want you to give it, so let's say there's a kid that showing a red flag and he's in your opinion, he's starting to maybe should be backed off on, how does that work within the coaches that you work with? Obviously they're contracting with you guys to do that, but how does that work? What is that conversation like, and how does the coaches usually handle that?
Yeah, I didn't do that until last year. My first year, it was, I started with them in the off season and I was like, oh, I really would love to keep this going in season, but we're in California, right?
Right.
Practice is the most important thing. So it's like, okay, how do I not take too much away from this? And, we end up seeming somehow flowing it into throughout the rest of the season, and it worked out great. So I think that the conversations led from, again, more so a relationship piece. Like, hey, they saw this work for one whole year in season and off season. So from my perspective, it was like, what more can I give them? What more can I give them? What they've done for these higher level college athletes or NFL athletes? What am I doing with them? And what can I bring down to these high school kids that is valuable? And they can deem that as valuable or not. Yeah, I can tell the coaches that he's red flagged and, hey, can we cut him on a couple reps? But it comes down to them if they're going to do that or not. Do they do that? Yes, because I stay and I watch practice most days. But if they don't, that's kind of up to them. But I think that them going through with it and listening to my advice, like I said, just comes from the last 3 years of things working.
No doubt. Yeah, Derek, you have a little background noise. I don't know, coming in there. I'm not sure what that's. I don't know what that's from, but when I muted, it went off. I don't know what that is. But I'm not sure what it is. So it's interesting because the reason why I asked it is because the reaction of coaches, right, when the individualized part of the whole tracking part of it is sometimes a tough conversation for coaches with strength and conditioning staff, because they have a way they go about it, and then you're saying, hey, this guy might need less or that guy might need less, and I was curious if they ever think they're no, does that ever happen? Is there ever and then obviously the end decision is still with them no matter what you present to them, so it's really you're presenting the opportunity, this is what we think, and then they do whatever they want regardless. But how does that is that happened? I mean, I'm sure it has.
So what I will say is I'm not doing this system. I'm not doing this for the entire freshman JV varsity. Okay.
Right.
Let me,
right.
let me set the scene for you. So the high school team that I'm on staff with, they have 800 kids in their entire school. Smallest public school in Orange County, no athletes outside of their district. And you can see the water, you can see the ocean from their field. All right. So there is no freshman and JV. That's one team. And then there's varsity. Right. So we don't even have enough kids to fill up that many teams. You're either varsity or not. Right. And half of our kids are both. We just played in D3 playoffs, and I think 4 of our guys played every snap of the game. So it's more manageable with a system like that. I put GPS on the 20 kids that see the field the most, because their load is probably going to be higher or dictate more than what somebody who's not even seeing the field as much as they are. also at the same time, it's a little bit easier to implement some of these changes when when I walked into that school, they were D12 in high school. Wasn't sure that was a thing. Didn't know that it went that far before I got there. And like I said, 2 weeks ago, we just played D3 playoffs. So I think that seeing something work, seeing things change, like, and I'm not saying that them going from D12 to D3 was me. That's a skill thing, that's a coaching thing, and it's the best coaching staff I've ever worked with. So I'll always put that all on them. But whatever we've been doing the last 2 years worked. So it's like, yeah, I think we trust in this system enough. And same with my athletes, like they trust in me and buy into my program enough. That's what's made them faster. I don't think that it's been this, they're still 140 pounds, so it's like, yeah, they trust me and they believe me and are bought into what I'm teaching them. So that's, I think, what makes them faster, no matter what time of the season that we're in.
Well, we've noticed a lot of the small and mid-sized school programs have had a lot of success with this stuff, with like the GPSs, feed the cats philosophy of sprint-based football, those kind of things. A lot of it maybe because of the fact that a lot of them play both sides of the ball, and they're playing other smaller schools. And if they have this program, it's giving them a significant edge. Now, I'm not talking about scheme or any of that other stuff. I'm just about like performance-wise, significant edge over other teams that don't have that capabilities or do not have that ability. And it seems like it's had like really, really great results. And lots of big schools are probably using these platforms, but they're also playing other big schools. And I think that's what makes it so glaring when you see like a smaller school that has a decent amount of kids playing both sides of the ball, and they're able to perform at a high level. I think that's where the strength and conditioning, the speed, and like it's having like, you could see the results really, really glaringly, because at small schools, like that gap could widen very quickly, right, between the good and the not as good, because of that kind of stuff. Is that something that you've been able to really notice? Because you said they went from D12, which I don't even know what D12 is. Is that like 8-man football, or?
I couldn't even. The schedule has obviously changed drastically. So we've played some really good programs this last season specifically. But yeah, I think I work with that school obviously full time, but within my academy, and when you're in this business and you're decent at what you do, I've worked with half the schools in this area, and not the entire school or the entire team in itself, but athletes from all these different schools. So like, yes, I'm on staff with Laguna Beach High School, but I have 10 kids from Mater Dei. I have 2 kids from Bosco. I have 5 kids from San Clemente. I have 10 kids from San Juan, that kind of thing. So it's like, you can obviously see the difference, and mostly in like program and schedule and things like that but other than that, like I'm training them the same way. But you see this, you see this, like when you have kids that are at this 800 student school and they're balling out, it's like, holy shit. Like, I tell kids all the time, it's like Randy Moss at Marshall. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's not one of the dogs at USC or the dogs at Georgia, where it's like, yes, they're all good as a collective. And yeah, there might be some standouts, but if you're a standout, you're known, If you're a standout player at one of these smaller schools and you're playing either other smaller schools or starting to get to playing some of these bigger programs and still doing well, you can, the path, it narrows, and then you kind of weed out some of those kids that don't exactly want it as much. And the kids that do, it shows, No
doubt. By the way, Derek, whatever you did, it fixed it. You're a technological whiz. I don't know how you did that, but you don't hear anything anymore. That's really interesting. And look, I was trying to guess in my head, what was it, like, Newport Beach or Laguna Beach, but you answered that riddle for me. It's it's really interesting from that standpoint, because you're able to see like significant standouts that make a big difference. Now, with your everyday clients outside of like your team stuff, um, how do you orchestrate like individualization of those athletes' programs? Like, are there are there tests that you try to do to measure and see what they need to work on? What do you do from that standpoint?
Yeah, that is kind of, I don't know, not necessarily a growing issue, but it's something that I try to in exclusive my program by doing, because I know that I'm going to have kids that I just met tonight. Like tonight, I have a session at 7 p.m. There will be a new kid that I just met tonight, and there's a kid that's been training with me for 5 years. So are they going to get trained the same? Probably not. I'm keeping the kids that are new or, have a lower training age, I'll keep them close to me, and I'm keeping the cues different. And if I could separate the class, I would. But then I know that I don't have to coach and cue my athletes that have been training with me for 5 years. I don't have to make sure that they're doing the right warm-up drills. Like, they know what to do. So that helps. And then, I'm testing, whether they know it or not, I'm testing every session. So, I have the lasers out every session. I have the GPS out every top speed day. We're doing change of direction drills. We're doing change of direction tests. Like, it's just how you manage it and how you control it and how you keep track of it. I utilize our universal speed rating, our online platform. And that helps out a bunch, because I know that, okay, this kid was here tonight and that's his baseline. This kid's been here for 5 years, and let's compare that to, 2 months ago or whatever it is, so it gives you that historical journey and, allows you to be able to like train multiple kids at once, or train kids that play baseball versus kids that train football, and kind of know where those changes and those discrepancies are. So I think it's really just about knowing the sport. Also, I think, I don't know, I do a needs analysis on like every sport if I don't know it, because I need to make sure that whatever I'm doing is going to be relatable for them as well. So that's what's helpful about speed and like continuing education and research on it, is like, how can I make what I'm doing applicable? And if I have, separate groups that are just football, then that's great. I don't have to worry about that. But not every sport has a non-linear piece at some point. So I know that I can do that. I know that that's relevant. I know that that's, transferable. So I think finding pieces within speed that can translate to any sport is important.
Right. It's about figuring out the correct framework, so you can then begin the model for what the effort has to be, within that framework. And you get the kind of multiplier effect where they start to, over time, really start to develop, right?
Yeah. And I think that my programs aren't complicated.
Right.
And maybe that's boring, and I don't know, maybe I lose some clients at some point because they're doing the same thing often. That's fine with me. I keep my structure the same. I keep my system the same. I change pieces. I change distances. I change volumes, intensities. I change exposure depending on what day it is. I change, I don't know, ground contact times depending on what day.
Right.
No. So
are you measuring all that too, like ground contact times?
No.
Movements of the bar, those kind of things?
No. So like, again, depending on what program it is, like with my NFL draft prep, where that is truly one of the most important pieces. Yes. Right. But if I have 40 kids and, they're there with the entire group and they want to run fast, stay healthy, and have fun, that's what they're coming there for. So right. Yeah, I'm coaching them up, and the actual ground contact times will be different, but they already know that because I'm explaining that. So it's like, I try not to overcomplicate it. And then maybe that's a good and a bad thing depending on who you ask.
No doubt about it. I'm cuckoo, so I track my own 10-year-old's velocity time, how high he's getting in ground contact time. So, yes. But you know what though, with younger kids, it's actually great because they just like gamifying everything anyway. So you don't have to get caught up in the they would rather go work out. They don't want to work out as much if you're not gamifying it. But you gamify it, it's actually pretty easy to get them because you're like, what was my thing last time? How fast did I move the bar on this at that weight? Oh, okay. So they just try to beat it. Like literally, that's what they do. Like, so and that's why I asked because everywhere is different, but like that's that gamification really makes it the athletes can see where they're tracking things over time, which for a long time, like I ran lots of showcases around the country, and we did all the testing and everything, and like it was a phenomenal thing, and then until it became a thing where people started to fear their times, right? And that's what I like about with all the continuous tracking, which allows athletes, if you're testing them once a week or whatever, or every couple of weeks, but what allows the athletes to be able to know when they go to something within a certain range, this is probably what they're going to run, right? There's much less surprises, whereas when we started running showcases in 2005, by the time it got to like 2015, 16, it had, went through this whole up cycle where everybody wanted to know at the time colleges were getting it. And then the kids started to say to themselves, I'm scared to get timed, right? Because they didn't have a path forward. And I think that a lot of the things, locally they didn't have a path forward, but one of the great things about the tracking and the ability to measure and not just put programming together, but be able to measure it is that when you go and send them to something, right, a college for they're going to go to a college camp and they're going to get timed, or an NFL pro day, right? Pretty much they're going to be within this range. And there's a lot of confidence with that. The athlete is much more confident, in my opinion, going into different situations versus the more of a randomized world, which is what it once was. And that's why I asked about the tracking, because I think it's actually one of the beauties of it. Technique and all these other things, you got to improve those without, sometimes you don't want them at time because you want to work on something and you don't want to be so concerned about their time or their distance. But I'm not sure if that's something they experience or not.
Yeah. I'm on the side of like, if you're not measuring and tracking, then you're guessing. So, but in the same sense, like, what's the context? So if you're coming to me once and I'm timing you once, that doesn't give you context, right? Like I here's your time. If I never see you again,
good luck.
There's still your time, but
I
have nothing before that and I have nothing after that. So I think that helps with buy into a program as well, because they want to continue, they want to see where they're at. So that's huge. But everything, I say it all the time, but everything's contextual, and there's blessings and curses to timing every session, to tracking every session, to testing every session. Is like, everybody thinks that, oh, I'm going to PR every single week, or I'm going to PR every single time that I test. And I'm like, I get kids all the time that are like, oh, coach, like what's going on? And it's like, they think that they're supposed to start here one week and end up here the next week. And I'm like, no, if this is your speed journey, it's going to look like this. And then we're going to get up here, right? But that's after, 2 years. I have tracked an athlete that I have for like the last 3 years, runs 23.1, right? Was 20.9 down here. And there's 3 years worth of data. It doesn't go like this. That's just not how it works, and it's not how it happens. And you have plateaus, or there's gaps in there where they were overworked or they had injury or something like that, and things don't look the same. So there's so many factors, and that's why speed is hard. And it's why I still actually have a job, because it's something that you can continuously work on. But like, if everybody was just progressing like that, my job would be easy and then flat, because there would be nowhere else to progress from there. It's hard to tell parents that haven't got faster for 3 weeks that, that this is just part of the process. But then, you continue to have them for the next 2 years. And then it's like, oh, wow, I just look back and I'm 2.5 miles up, whatever. So, it just kind of depends on the context and the group of athletes that you have and how well you can communicate all of this to them.
Right. CiCi, in retrospect to that aspect that you're talking about, where it's a long journey, it's kind of a trust the process type of situation. When you see that your clients plateau, or what is usually the main cause of that plateau? Is there one common thing that you see over and over when someone kind of evens off for a little bit? Is there something that stands out more than something else? Is there something with all the tracking of the data? Is there something that stands out for when an athlete plateaus as to why they do that? Is there something that happens more than something else?
If we're looking at like high school athletes, for example,
right.
When I originally presented my, pitch or whatever to my head coach of the high school that I work with, it was like, hey, my goal isn't to increase their speed in season. That might sound crazy coming from the speed coach, but my goal is to maintain them, to keep them healthy, and make sure that on Friday night, if they have to go and run 40 yards at full speed, then they're not going to get hurt. And they'll be able to do that. And their bodies will be prepared for that. And their tissues will be prepared for that. And they'll be fine. In turn, all of them got faster still, but it was like, hey, that isn't my goal. So look at their season. Maybe there's a plateau there. If you're practicing 5 days a week, 4 days a week, right? Your body is not going to react the same as it would if you have your accurate rest days in between. Rest
100%.
Factor. Sleep plays a huge factor. Their weight room plays a huge factor. Whether their girlfriend broke up with them yesterday or not.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I'm in California, where it's like there is no off season for any of these sports, really.
Right. Which is so different, CiCi, not to cut you off, from where we are, obviously in New Jersey, where it is so seasonal, right? And football literally basically, you are locked in a weight room basically for, a lot of months out of, the entire thing. There is no spring ball here, right? Like of these guys, yeah. So when some of these guys literally, look, for me, our season ended, there's still 2 more weeks of the playoffs here. They'll be done. Football will be over here in Jersey the first week of December. And other than, hey, you're in the weight room getting bigger, stronger, faster, you won't be on a field. You're not allowed to work with your guys as a high school coach with a football until June, until the last day of spring sports. So that's really what it is, right? So look, we get creative with it. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? A towel and a tennis ball work just the same as a football, but organization wise, team wise, even if you are, working out and doing those things, that is basically all you're doing. And the weather does play a huge role here, which look, we put multi-sport guys, that's a big thing, right? Because you can go and do some of those other things, but the fact that it's football isn't something here that is year round. I mean, we struggle with it all the time doing a 7-on-7 club. Look, we start in March and it's still really, really cold. Don't get us wrong. You know what I mean? Whereas, it's so different.
December.
Right. And 7-on-7 is linked to the high school, correct? We don't have some of that
they
stuff.
Have clubs. No, they have a lot of elite clubs.
Yeah.
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying, there's also high school club. I mean, look, it's just so different when it comes to looking at where we are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I honestly was unaware of that, actually, so we are still in playoffs right now. I still have guys that still play tomorrow. That will play through there's 2 more weeks. So we play into December. Okay.
Yep.
7-on-7, I don't tryouts, whatever that happens second to last week of December. 7-on-7 starts in January. Right. Yeah. And they go from January, and if they're not doing 7-on, they're doing 4-vert with their high school. So I'm not sure if that's
what is it called?
called Forvert. So it's basically 7-on-7, but it is through their high school, which I'm okay with because they're playing with the guys that they're going to be playing with during season.
Love that.
Yeah. So that's something, it's like I said, similar to 7-on-7, but you have that communication with the rest of your team that you're going to be playing on. 7-on-7 is hard. It's a grind. And then you are playing with these guys that you've never played with before. And you're playing in these 7-day tournaments with no athletic trainer and playing 19 games. And then you come back and the next week you start spring ball. And then your spring ball is going for the next couple of weeks. And then you have one dead period in which you're with me every day because you can't do anything else with your high school. And then you're in pads in the next 3 weeks. It's like, there is that is the reality out here. So it's like, I have to work around that, and like dose everything where it belongs. I don't need to have you for 2 hours, 3 days a week and have every workout you do be the hardest session you've ever done.
Right.
I would like to microdose our exposures in, so that you are prepared for all of these things and you are getting this in, but it doesn't need to be, that's the nice thing about speed is I can take 30 minutes and have them get in what they need to get in and be done, So I think that's what makes it a little bit easier just on my side. But like I said, I'm working with a lot of athletes that if there's an off season, they're in club, travel ball, 7-on-7, other sports, whatever it is. I just don't have to combat the weather, which is nice.
Yeah, no, I just quickly looked up Forvert because that's the look that up real quick. It's it's really interesting the model. When you said that your main goal obviously in season is to keep them healthy, to maintain where they're at, and then by virtue of them being healthy and fresh, they actually are getting faster. It was interesting because like Tony Hollett, for example, and I'm trying to think of who the other guy was that said it to. They really are pushing hard to try and get faster in season, and as like a goal, right? As a goal, and Derek, right? That's one of the things that they've talked about. And I wonder if this is just me thinking out loud. I wonder if that's actually possible without creating extra stress. That's me thinking out loud. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, everyone's going to have a different philosophy on this,
right.
and I'm, open to all sides of it.
Right.
I think that the philosophy though ends up being the same. Like speed is still the byproduct. Speed is the byproduct. That's just kind of how it happens. And, that's what they pay me for. And that's what I'm there for. And, but it's what funnels into that makes them faster. At the end of the day, yes, they're getting faster. How does that happen? Why does that happen? Or what's your philosophy behind why they're getting faster? That's what's going to change. And it's what changes for me specifically, being a girl who has never put on pads and go and played football, so my philosophy has to be a little bit different.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I and that, not to, sound bias on anything, but that is an actual reality that I deal with, obviously. That there is certain pieces that I fall on or that I'm better at or that I'm not as good at. And so I make up for in other departments or I lack in some, so how I have come about in my, 6th, 7th year now of coaching is like, just like snowballed of like, hey, what didn't work? What worked? What didn't work? Hey, I hustled backwards that year. That didn't work. Let's build off of that and meet everybody where they're at. That's kind of what my now just like overall philosophy. I meet the coaches, I meet the athletes, I meet whoever it is where they're at. I lead with respect, and then kind of like everything else falls in line from there.
Yeah, I think the what's great is that for the most part, nothing's being done. Where coaches are putting extra stress on them, and that's starting to put more and more attention, like conversations like what we're having with you and other people is putting into that conversation, like the Gasser philosophy after practice is a bad move. Okay. Any kind of stuff you're doing sprinting wise, just like you do, you know what I mean? Or explosive wise, plyo wise, or anything, it should be in the front part, right? And it's a bad move. It's funny because for many years, my father's a long time, still as a track coach for probably over 60 years now, and legendary coach in sprinting, and track coach in general, but sprinting is one of his areas of expertise. What was interesting when we were in high school, and this is the 90s, back when we definitely got overworked. So we definitely got overworked back then.
By design.
By design. But one of the interesting things you always used to say, like as far as like with lifting, is like, hey, if we're gonna do anything explosive, we got to do it before we get to some quote unquote some of the stuff that we need to get done in practice, but make sure to do the speed explosives part early on, and not to put yourself in a situation where you're going to overtax it. Now, mind you, back then the workouts were partially torture, and for a big sprinter like me, every single thing was absolute torture. But it was but so interesting now, the focus heavy, and he evolved that his exact process where everything's fast, big breaks, making sure we get the return on investment and we don't overtax the athlete, right? And I think that's such an important thing. And then the progression comes over time with the tracking, which is the amazing part about it all. It's like you can literally look at what they're doing and be able to track it versus the old, the old guesstimate of all those kind of things. So it's an art form as well as, obviously, it's both. It's not like only pure science. You have to have a feel for not just the numbers, but when to pull back and what kids are telling you and what they're communicating to you. But it's really, really interesting. It's great stuff that you're doing. I love your like desire to learn and to like continue to evolve what you're doing. Like you got a great future in this industry, because you really have a really good feel, and you have a really good feel for like, hey, I got these big football coaches that I got to deal with. I got to make sure they understand that I could do the job. And I think that is, you kind of, you touch on it, but that is definitely a difficult thing with respect to the football space, especially, right? Because there is no female tackle football really, so that's I think your awareness on that stuff is awesome. I mean, awesome. And allows you to really succeed and navigate what you actually you said was treacherous waters in the beginning, right? So it allows you to navigate those treacherous waters a lot more efficiently.
It's not so treacherous anymore, because
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Well, you've earned your stripes, for to say, right? Like you've put how many guys at the combine who've run this time. They continue to come back to you. But look, I can only imagine how difficult it was to break down those walls and barriers. And obviously, you're at the forefront of it. And football is still, like the most, male-dominated sport industry across the board, whether it be actual coaching or just anything that enables those guys to play football, whether it be trainers, whatever that stuff is. I think you've navigated those waters like on a whole different level. But yeah, I could see it being a daily grind, is to I mean, just because you didn't play the game, right? I mean, even some of the best coaches right now who didn't play the game still get that kind of knock because they didn't play the game. They haven't put on a helmet. They've never, gone and made a tackle or whatever. But I think the thing that you stand on and that proves that is, you're putting these athletes in the best position. And ultimately, and I've said this across the board, every trainer, strength person we talk to, when you can keep guys healthy, especially at smaller schools where that's the pivotal aspect to it, right? Especially a school at Laguna where it's smaller, where one guy going down could literally be the season, and that's it. And so coaches, why wouldn't I, as a head coach, buy into something that's going to keep my guys on the field 100% healthy, not like, oh, this guy's working with half an ankle today, or this, or, you know, hey, he did a hamstring. Now for the next 3 weeks, I have to babysit him and he can only play one way. Like the shit that goes into it, like you're doing like God's work. That's for sure. For those coaches, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. And they're doing God's work for me. Like that,
Right.
I've arguably done some cool stuff in my career, but like this journey program experience with this high school team and just being involved in the entire journey of it, like that's the coolest shit I've ever done in my life. Like
right.
There's so much influence that I've been able to have, and just like their influence on me, they've made me such a better person and such a better coach. And I've been able to try stuff with them, didn't work with them, so I'm not going to use it with my NFL guys, or you know, anything. You know, we've gone personally, you know, life, we've gone through so much. I've watched these kids grow up. Now going their senior year, I've watched them grow up since they were freshmen. They've watched my mom go to the hospital. You know what I mean? Like there's there's a true and honest like personal tie and connection that I have to all my athletes. And that's truly the only reason why I feel like I've been successful, is because everything that I've done that's ever been successful has come from me pouring like everything that I can into it, and all of my love, energy, resources, and everything that I have. And I think that, you know, again, that there's a difference between men and women coaches. And I think that there's benefits and different things that male coaches can bring to male athletes. And I think that there's differences that a female coach can bring to a male athlete, and vice versa, you know, with girls as well. So I really just try to take all that with me all the time. And then at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't like my training, that's okay.
100%.
Phenomenal.
That's what it is.
That's fine.
I know you have a hard out. I know you have a hard out at 4:00, so I don't want to hold you up. We came right under the radar here. Phenomenal having you on. You did it. You're a rising star in this industry, and you're doing great things. And we really appreciate you coming on. It's great talking to you today.
Of course. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
CiCi. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good day. That was good. Really good. Good stuff.
Again, like the whole smaller school, dial it back a little bit. I
noticed a trend there.
Keeping guys healthy, man. Keeping guys healthy. And I think it's cool to look like
it has a larger impact, because it's not a survival of the fittest mode when you load it with athletes, and you can't really one of the things about like small, because we both went to small schools, so we know this probably firsthand, like it really has a huge impact on smaller schools. Like I see this kind of programming, as many schools that can implement it at the smaller school level, it gives them a better opportunity for success. And then listen, the big schools are going to do what they're going to do, but they do have a level of survival of the fittest to what. Right. Because you have a plethora, you're right. Endless riches, right? So when you have endless riches, now big schools who have not had success in the past and are trying to get there, these are things that might be able to help you compete. But the established programs, they're all doing this stuff different as well in some capacity. But there is a survival of the fittest. Like, we have so many guys that are good. The one that can handle all this and keep on trucking is it doesn't mean that.
Also, hey, if God forbid that guy something does happen or whatever, this guy can go play and we'll still be okay, right? Like you don't have that with smaller school.
You don't.
Like it just doesn't work like that, And to see how that. And like as a head coach to buy into it, right? Like I'm sure hey, like this works, right? So we're going to continue to do this. You know what I'm saying? And then to see the kids be like, okay, like we were at this point in like a couple years ago, we've done it this way. And now look at where we are. So you know what? Like, let's keep doing it. And then they'll tell the younger guys that are coming in, like, this is how we do it. And it's just, the dynamics of it just work out so well that, you just keep rolling with it. But I mean, I'm sure it was extremely difficult for her to break into it and for guys to like buy in and trust it. I'm talking more of like her NFL guys, right? Like without the backing of someone else saying, no, what she's saying is right? That initial group of like, really, like, this is what we're going to listen to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to listen to, a female who's never played this sport before, and she can't even demonstrate the drills or whatever that she's asking us to do. But then, the second you see your numbers start going a certain way, or what she's teaching and coaching starts helping you, like, okay, now we're all in. And now there's that retention factor of like, hey, where do you go? Oh, we go here, or I'm going back here. Like, that's how it works, man.
Yeah, no, I think that the tracking stuff really enables you to create frameworks where someone who may not have the background can figure out programming faster versus, like literally in the past, it really was an art form. Like you didn't have all the measuring that you did have to have like some knowledge base to have a feel for it, like a feel of like, I know when I was getting better, or I know when someone else was getting better from this. I saw it, I was around it, I played with it. That was your original framework. What the timing and all the measurements allow you to do, and I think, by the way, it's a good thing, is that you could build frameworks around these things with taking the numbers and figure out the goals and figure out the time you have and start to structure a program. And then you're just restructuring frameworks and programming versus trying to figure out what the results are and backtracking through that. You know what the results are each way step along the way, and then you just realize you got to tweak this. Oh, okay, his arm action isn't good, or he's not driving properly. Like you could track that because you could see at certain points where things are weak or strong. And I think that allows you to like break apart the actual development aspect and say, well, we did this. This is what we did last week, and we had some progress to the next week. Oh, we have 3 weeks of no progress. Okay,
right.
Let's restructure some of this stuff to do this. Okay, great, that worked. All right, so if you weren't able to time, you could go months and not know if you did really develop.
Right.
That's why track and field was so important. Because what did track and field actually do? You race every week. You know whether the training you're doing is getting you better or not, because you literally had a time that said you ran slower or faster, or you jumped farther or not. And what you said is 100% true. It's like this, up and down, because I just think about when I was a track athlete, sometimes I peak too early. Okay, now you can measure, so some of those things won't happen as often. But sometimes I had a great day. I jumped really well or ran really well. The next week I ran slower. But if you look at the tracking over time, it probably over time was more of like an upward line, but there was downs and ups. And in the old days, the downs and ups were probably pretty radical, even though you probably got better over time. It was probably so radical. Now you could probably get more incremental improvement because you're tracking it, so there's less variable over time. So you might over time get more increases. That's why I've seen, like, I can't think of the guy's name. I think he runs for Iowa, track kid. Basically, his freshman year in high school, he ran a very, very subpar 100 meters. And he's now one of the elite kids in the NCAA, but he was like a 12 something in 100 as a freshman, which is really not great.
No.
And now obviously he was dedicated to it. Maybe he didn't train properly, but he like went all in. This coach did a great job of tracking him. And by the time he was out of high school, he was like a 10.5 or 10.4 guy, maybe 10.4. I think he was the Iowa State champ. Now he's, one of the top sprinters in the country in the 100 meters. And it wasn't like he was just this guy from the time he was 8 years old that was a bullet, you know what I mean? And then you kind of just got him training and you kept moving on the path. This was a guy who was okay. And that's where I think you can, like, if you can get numbers, you could figure out, like, you have to have talent. Obviously, he had talent. There was something that was missing, maybe puberty. I don't know. You know what I mean? But you can make larger improvements in areas that we once thought were almost impossible. You know, like you always say, like, I wasn't as fast. That wasn't really fast. It was quick. Well, in today's world, the fact that you were quick means that you have fast twitch, which means that if you were tracking these things and you were developing, and Butler had this back when you were in high school, you probably were very fast. You just didn't train in that capacity, right? Because to me, fast twitch is fast twitch, right? If you're able to now, it doesn't mean you would run the 100 meters.
Right,
as fast
it's different.
As a 6-foot guy, you know, a 6-foot guy might run fast because he can. Maybe he's close to as quick as you, but the stride takes over and so on and so forth. But like for 40 yards, right, or 60 yards, you definitely should be. You would have been. And those things wouldn't be as much of a factor. Height is less of a factor. The fact that you're quick is less of a factor. And you may have been able to figure out, even at the 100 meters, by tracking turnover, like drills to do to gain more turnover, to gain more stride length. And then you would have looked up and you'd be like, wow, you know, I was, you know, guys thought I was an 11.9 sprinter and I end up ending my career at 10.9, right? And that makes think how big a difference that would be. That's a difference with your skill set. You were first team All-State, right? Right? You were first team All-State. So if they looked at you and said, oh, Derek's really quick, right? Okay, you go to Sacred Heart, right? And that's where you start out. Well, if they went in and they said, well, Derek's really quick and he ran a 10.90 100-meter dash, right? They would be like, well, can he play at Rutgers? Maybe he can. You know what I'm saying? So, like, even though he's quote-unquote undersized, he's quick and fast. So you can, I think you can develop those things. And the flip side for, like, a big guy, like, you know, overly, like, you know, a tight end type guy. How does a tight end guy go run 4.4? Well, in the old days, he'd have been stuck in 4.8 land. You know, he's big, he's clunky. You know, they didn't know how to, like one of the guys we had on said there's, you know, some guys that are tendon driven and muscle driven. Well, tight ends are more muscle driven, right? They're bigger guys. They got to develop the muscles around it because the tendons are not as twitchy as a skinny guy, right? So that's how those guys go and run 4.4 because they figure that out and they develop them. Now, all of a sudden, a 4.8 guy runs a 4.5, and you're like, yeah, he could play in the NFL. And I think that's a difference maker, which is really, really interesting. And you coaches who are on board with this, I think, are going to have a huge advantage. There'll be a window of time, like as it becomes super affordable in 10 years, like we'll be old by then, you know. Yeah. But when it becomes affordable for everybody in 10 to 15 years, like where you go on Temu and get this stuff, that's gonna be a while before that.
I also think that adds to it too, because look, as us, like, you know, just the smaller teams with less guys allows you to get this technology for however many amount, you know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to equip 70 guys with it, 60 guys, whatever it is, right? Like, hey, I need 5, 7, I need 10, and these are the main guys. Like, you know, like I got 5 guys that go both ways. If I can get data on these 5, if I can keep them healthy and whatever, like that makes my season a totally different direction. So I think all that stuff kind of factors into it. And ultimately, like, I think that's the trend. I think I don't think it's a trend, to be honest. Like, I think once guys realize like this is what's gonna go, you know, everybody will follow suit as you know. For how fast that happens, I don't know. Tony talks about it all the time. Like, you know, I've been doing this for God knows how many years. I just got popular, you know, but I think with the way social media is and how fast things can kind of like catch on now because everybody could see more of it, you know, it's not just like word of mouth or anything like that. Like, people could see it, like, you know, adopt it, and before you know it, like, bam, they're doing it. Like that, I think will increase it. But I mean, the more you see it, I mean, look, the NFL already does this. You know what I mean? Like, they ain't practicing hard.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the highest level program, like at this point of the college football season, like you ain't banging around in practice unless you're, you know, And if you are, you're
Maybe.
the 3 or the 4 on the depth chart, right? And they're trying to figure something out. Like the ones aren't doing shit right now. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just, again,
working your plays, working your technique.
100%. Like survival of the fittest. Everybody's kind of quote unquote banged up right now. Like I'm not saying guys are hurt or you know what I mean? Like, or injured, right? But guys have something going on that, hey, I just need to be full go for Saturday or Sunday. And that's what this kind of balances an entire program around.
There's you might know the name because I think he just stopped coaching a few years ago, but coached college for a million years, and there's his name was Lyndon Johnson. He was a lineman for UConn before I got there, but he had this reputation of not actually practicing very much, right? And he was unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable, like All-American. But it used to frustrate, I heard it secondhand, obviously, from guys that played with him because they were older when I was younger. But they said that, like, he didn't practice on this day or that day, and then he would get ready on, And if you think about it, the way that people coached back then, where they just buried you,
right?
He was so good that he had some sort of own internal, like, preservation system that if he wasn't the best one of the best linemen in FCS at the time, he wouldn't get away with it, right? They wouldn't let him do that. But because he had this own internal preservation system, which allowed him to be fresh in every single game. But in his case, it was kind of like he didn't really practice much, but it was kind of his own version.
Right, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, and only obviously back then, a guy who, was really the best player could get away with that. Like, I couldn't get away with that. Of course,
hell no.
Fullback or
you
linebacker.
had to be really good to, like, you know what I mean? Like I had to work my tail off every day.
Right. And there are certain positions that you were never going to, like, a running back could get away with that. Honestly, a great offensive lineman could get away with it because how many great ones are there? Not many, right?
Correct.
So there were certain positions that maybe a receiver could, but it's really, really interesting. And that now you're seeing, obviously that is now the norm, you developing preservation within the players. And I like to think about, like, go back to, like, when was Glen Rock at its best in the small schools? When was Saddlebrook at its best? When was Butler at its best? When they had really integration. Now they're obviously great. Part of it's probably also, I hate to say it because they're so good, but there's not as many great teams as there used to be at that small school level.
Especially not at the small school level.
Yeah, small school level. Whereas they're one of the few left. You're only competing now with, if you have a good program, there's a handful probably.
And they've done things right, like schedule-wise, where they're playing, schools that are that size, right? And it's always the argument of, like, oh, well, like all the old heads just want to be like, well, you don't play the teams we played. Well, dude, it's different now. Like, it is just different, right? Oh, well, only 4 teams made the playoffs back then, and all that kind of nonsense shit. Like, dude, you still got to win.
Yes, with Butler, Saddlebrook, Glen Rock, really did. They were integrated back in the day with track, right? That was a big part of it.
Right.
And the track coaches were like, hey, football coach, if you want your football team to be better, give me your fastest guys.
Right.
I'll get them faster for football. You'll win more games. Give me your shot putter, like your lineman. They'll be lifting for sure because they got to lift the track practice, right? So they're going to squat. They're going to do all. This is before, obviously, you had all the coordinated programs the way you have now.
Right.
That gave those teams at that time period, at 90s or late 90s, early 2000s. Butler, obviously, we're doing it in the 80s and 90s all the way through when you were there. Glen Rock was really in that 90s, mid 90s time frame when Paul White first got there. Then albeit, and Paul White had to suffer losing until he got all the program, and then he basically he got, like, he had to step down, but he was just a track coach then. But he worked with Aldiet, and then DJ Nymphius obviously was there. So you see these things. And in Riverdale, Riverdale had this great track. I don't know what it's like anymore, but they had a great track program. Old Japan, probably the best track program still in North Jersey in public schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that other kids don't play sports, because now you can, because you can track these things. But there is that, the track coach could go to football, and the coaches that listened really had a huge advantage. Like,
absolutely.
You're handing me 4 or 5 guys that are much faster. And
or you had the football coach that was the track coach.
Right,
like,
right.
like that's another part of it, right? But just the overall, like, collaboration between sport coaches, right? Like, now everybody's just kind of out for themselves or whatever it is. And there's no like, hey man, if we can be good at football and track, then the school looks good. And guys, that's not, I don't know, man. Like, that stuff's kind of gone away.
I noticed that at Red Bank when we got there, even though some of our kids did run track, but I noticed it wasn't like, I remember it wasn't a thing. Like, they weren't like, yeah, like,
it was like, well, I do track,
but they weren't trying to, they were doing the best they could, but they weren't invested. That's the word. The investment is what the difference between making you, I think, a very good football player to maybe you get speed enough to be an elite. Like, I always think about, like, not just Anthony Pomo, but like Lucas Cuellar. Like, Lucas Cuellar was just, dude, the dude could get the ball because he ran track.
Right. And hit the edge later.
It was like, he pitched it, and it was like, unless we played a team like you guys or Glen Rock, it was literally the pitch hit the edge when he pitched it and Lucas caught it. It was like he just shot it. It was 6. It was crazy.
And that one player being healthy or not separates that program, everything, right? Because that's just what you're working with, man. And it's really, it's just different. But I think it's a positive, right? The more that guys latch onto this and buy in, it'll just continue to like track upward.
No doubt. DJ actually texted me and was asking me, like, we were talking a little bit about this, and he was saying, like, who was the kid that was your fullback, like our dive back in the day? Right. His name is Jesse DeLuey, and he said, well, I said, well, Jesse DeLuey, not only was he 215, like he was like my height, 215, and he placed in the state group meet in 100-meter dash. He ran like 11:0 something. Like,
those kids can run.
Like, so big, big dude. Like, he was kind of built kind of how I was in high school. Like, I might have been a little bigger, but it was similar. And the dude would he would get a dive play, and it wasn't like he was overly shifty or anything. But if you missed the tackle, like, the dude just ran straight fast, and he was gone. It's interesting how that, like, and I think if Jesse never ran track, yeah, he probably would have been a good dive back, but he wouldn't have been the kind of guy that, like, all of a sudden you missed the tackle at 4 yards, and all of a sudden it was like, you look up, it'd be 6 points. You look up at some of these games, and this because you played in them for your when you played, you look up and you're like, all right, well, I guess we have 30 points already, and you're like. And when you played was still when those conferences were good. Okay, this was right, and you were dropping these points like teams like the BPS. Hawthorne was good. PCT, we played PCT. Patterson Catholic, we played. Glen. These teams were powerhouses. It's funny because when I discuss it, like my son asked me, I'm like, and I'm like, I can't explain if you look at it now versus what it was like 20 years ago.
No, I can't. You can't.
Even 15.
It's not even close.
Yeah, it's not. It's not even close. The last few years that I was at Powell Park, it was the last time. And the next year, my very last year, I noticed that actually there was a kind of a drop happening. But those last couple of years, it was like still. You still had Saddlebrook as a power. You still had Pompton Lakes as a power. You still had Hasbrook Heights as a power. Butler, obviously. Glen Rock was still a power. Like, you still had some of the, Hawthorne was a power. New Milford was teetering. They were still pretty much a power.
I mean, look, there were teams that were good that no longer are even teams. Midland Park. Cresskill. Like, that's who I look. Cresskill. I was the first round playoff game for my senior year. But I also think, like, look, it's also helped those small programs kind of stay afloat and stay relevant too by putting them all in that group one type of conference. And look, they do things a little different where they kind of play a pseudo conference championship. And you know what I mean? Like that's add a little quirk to it that kind of keeps that, like, I don't know, that smaller group one, like thing alive. Otherwise these programs wouldn't be programs anymore. Like they wouldn't even have teams. You know what I'm saying? You'd have a bunch of co-ops and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good thing.
Oh, you have some fluid? Okay. In 5 minutes we'll work out. So yeah, no, I agree with that. You know, it's funny, Cresco, like Bob Valley. Was Bob Valley? Yeah, Bob Valley, yeah. So Bob Valley, like, this is how coaching used to be. Now, I don't know how it is now in the last 5 years. I mean, it was changing even when I was in my last few years. But Bob Valley, like, I remember playing him, right? And he used to do whatever it took, like high grass, whatever it took to beat you, right? And then I would the next time, you know, he would be like, "Hey man, you know, come into my office. Come down to Cresco. Let's talk." Like literally, he would say, he'd be like, "Hey, you know, you're doing some good things." He's like, blah blah blah. Like he would talk to me. He's like, "If you need anything," and it was genuine. If you like, you know, we're not playing till next year. You need anything, blah 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 blah. Like, you know, come and see me anytime. Come to my office anytime, you know? And that's how coaches were. You know what I mean? Like coaches were like Bob, he would do anything to beat you, like anything. But as soon as that game was over, or like anything he could, like if you wanted to even talk with him about what he did against you, he would. Like he would talk 100%. Like, hey, this is what I saw, you know, this was a weakness you have, you know? And I mean, those guys are not as many of them are around anymore. I mean, there's still some, but I that was one of the things that as it got later and later, like I don't know that it happens as much just because of social media. You have coaches clinics, but like people don't invite each other into the offices because you get all the information anyway, so you don't really need to. You can watch it and get it, right? So. But I that was one of the things that I absolutely used to love, dude. Like I used to love. I'd meet Dunkin' Donuts with Benji Wimberly. We would talk about, you know, like Benji Wimberly. To me, when I first started coaching, like, oh my god, like this guy was, you know, already a legend with what he had, and he talked to me as I was a normal person, you know, 100%. like I was a regular guy. I was saying to me, hey, I remember when you were in high school when I was a young assistant at Patterson Catholic and coaching against you. I'm like, oh my god, Benji, like, you know what I mean? So those things
that used to be a really good thing. Like, you know, when you get into coaching and then guys would kind of like, hey man, like I remember you as a hell of a player or whatever, or just like give you that respect that like, hey, now you're on this side of it. Like, what can I do to help you? And that's how they were when you were a player. Right. Like it wasn't, you always, you know, oh, that guy's the other coach and whatever. No, these guys were like, hey man, like there's a mutual level of respect across the board. Like, and that was something that was always to me, like, so I don't know, just took it to a whole nother level of like, why do I want to do this? Like, because that stuff's so cool.
So cool. And so cool. It's probably a world that's never coming back. But
because everything is now it's just there's a lot of egos, right? It's all about me, right? Like, you know, that's why I kind of love this thing that, you know, like how people are just so willing to come on here and just puke it out and share whatever, and how can we all get better? Like it's not like, you know, oh no, I'm not saying any of that because, you know, I don't want that. Like, no man, like we all want to be really, really good, and it's better when everybody is good, you know what I mean? Like it's just, that's just, I don't want to go out there and beat somebody's brains in and embarrass somebody, right? When I know how hard behind the scenes, like what everybody's putting in to win and all that kind of shit. Like I know how hard those kids are working, irregardless of what, you know, all the other stuff. Like, hell no, man. Like I'm never going to be like that. Like what can I do to help anybody, you know, kind of get where they want to go or achieve whatever dreams or aspirations that they have? Like that's what guys did for me. And that's like how I'll always be with, you know, guys, if they ask questions or want help, like I'm going to be the same way.
That's what it is. The zero sum game made it like if lose, you win, or I win, you lose. There is no in between, and really there is an in between. Like I could win and still learn from you. So it's and there is I think as a whole, like, and this is one of the hard things for Jersey football in general, I guess, is as athletes to be get better and better, you have to have a certain level of competition. And what makes it, I don't know if this is the case around the country, because maybe it's the same around the country, but there is so many more haves and have-nots. And when you play a have-not, you really, like, yeah, you feel good, you won the game by a lot, but are you really getting better? So are you really getting better versus when you used to be able to look at your schedule, even if you had a great team, you still weren't sure about these 4 games. Like, yeah, you know what? We could be an undefeated team. We could be an 8-win team. But these 2 or 3 games could, if we don't come out the way we need to, go the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Because the team's good. Now, if you're a really good team, you might be looking at like 1 game, maybe. You know, like,
and I think that was something that, as a smaller school, always playing bigger schools, right? Like, we never felt like every week, even if that bigger school, you know what I mean, was like 0 for or 1, like, you never went into it like, all right, we're good. Like, we're good. Like, no, it was like, dude, you never know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? And you would look at it, and you played the same schools year after year after year. So there were, people used to always ask me, like, what was your rival high school? Like, well, dude, every school, like, everybody, right? Like, one, because we were always everybody's like target, because we were always pretty good. Like, you knew you were going to get everybody's best shot, but at the same time, like, you played the same teams. So you knew exactly, like, hey, this team's going to, like, this is going to suck. Like, this is going to be really hard. You know what I mean? But you also embraced that hardness. Like, we didn't want it to be easy, like, if coaches were pulling us out of the game in the second quarter, like, we were pissed. Like, we just practiced all week. Like, I want to keep playing. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a healthy level of that all the time.
And if you don't get the reps, like, the younger guys might get the reps, but if you don't end up getting full game reps over the course of 9 games, and you only got 2 quarters, if you got 18 quarters in 9 games versus getting
just do math. Just do the math. If you're not a two-way starter, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about how much less you get just in general. Or now, if you're only a receiver that only goes in on certain packages or whatever, like, you're just not getting reps at all.
Right. You're not getting reps, and it's very hard to get to where you need to do that at the high school level. And it's especially, like, you end up ending your high school career if you're on a good team and you're like, oh man, there's a lot, like, I could have did to get better.
It's why I tell these guys all the time, like, buddy, you guys got to, like, embrace everything, whether it's a varsity game, a JV game, like, it's a game. Like, you're getting to play in a game. Like, why I have to play both sides of the ball today? Like, yeah, dude. Like, why do you don't want to? Like, are you crazy? Like, like, there ain't that many opportunities, right? And I don't. It's just like, I got to run down on kickoff. Like, yeah, dude, you don't want to do this. Like, I think I get it. Like, I get it in the fact that they just don't understand it because they're in it, right? And it's hard. It's hard right now. Like, oh my God. But, like, after that 3rd game where you're in game shape and you're like, this is amazing. Like, I'm good to go. Like, let's go. But look, on the same thing, like, yeah, I'd love to have GPSs on all my guys tracking that you just played 100-something snaps and whatever. Like, sorry, dude. But, like, also, like, you're going to thank me. Like, like, shit. All right. Whatever,
All right, tomorrow. Are we back tomorrow?
Tonight.
Oh, tonight. That's tonight. Okay.
Yeah, Quisenberry's tonight because he wants to. Dude, he's been like
tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. with the new head coach for girls flag at Caldwell College.
Okay. Quisenberry tonight at 9.
Yeah, with Quisenberry.
Okay. All right.
He feels like he's short-ended us, buddy. He's all like, dude, we had bad connection, and I was walking around outside, and he's like, now tonight we're good to go. So
Okay, I will.
All right.
Let me put that one together, and I'll
let me know.
That's 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, perfect. All right, man.
All right, man.
Well, I'll see you later.
All right, buddy.
Bye.
Later.